don't think it can happen to you.
The hit-and-run chase in California, a motorcycle rider witnessing a driver slam into several cars and then speeding away.
It can happen to you within seconds, a blink of an eye.
Tonight about the man suspected of killing a woman in a hit-and-run and his plan to evade justice.
When you take your eyes off the road for just seconds, when you're driving your car, oh, yes, it can happen to you. See, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When the sands of time will run out within your hourglass.
New at 10, a hit and run caught on video, and now a teenager and his family are looking for the driver who took off.
He was a victim of a distracted driver hitting the road while riding his motorcycle going 65 miles per hour. He nearly lost his life. Now on a crusade to help save lives and prevent someone else from becoming a victim, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com and now the host of this podcast, it's Howard Drescher.
All right, welcome. Welcome to another show of DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I am your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast show. You can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and you can get the shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Amazon, and now I just found out by accident. I really did. It's also on TuneIn. I found it by accident. I was actually at work with our engineer, Mike Boyle, and we were talking about how to get different games on our apps, and he brought up the fact of Intune. So I went to Intune, I downloaded it, and I just for fun, I did a search of my podcast show, and you just type in the keyword DistractedDB, and there it is. So now I'm on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Amazon, and Intune. And I appreciate them for taking my show. Again, I listened to the last show that I put up there, and I think before my show even starts, they have an ad. So that's fine with me. I mean, they're doing me a favor by putting me on that platform, and I appreciate that. But it's been a while since I've done a show. It's probably pretty close to a month. And I did some numbers a couple of weeks ago in regards to the shows that I've done and in the past years. And normally I'm up to 60 or 70 shows a year. Unfortunately, this year, I'm going to be at like 35, maybe 38 if I remember. I can't remember the number of my last show that I did. But you can get the shows and listen. And I'm hoping in next year or this year now, 2023, I'm hoping to do more and more shows. I've been really kind of hesitant about getting guests on the phone and talking with them or doing a Zoom meeting, just for the simple fact that sometimes it's really hard to marry that up while I'm at work or they're at work. And sometimes the conflicts of time come into play on that. So this is why I've kind of backed off on some of the shows. Plus, with my other job that I have, I want to try to maintain my high standards in that department and what I do. So sometimes I do come home a little bit later and I don't have time and I'm just too exhausted. And I know I shouldn't even be saying that because honestly, for having you guys listening to my show, it is a true honor. And I definitely appreciate that. And, the victims deserve it. The victims deserve to have some kind of representation out there. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I wasn't really going to do a show like this, just like I normally do, until probably after the 3rd or 4th of January. My original intent was really for my first show in the new year, 2023. Here we are in January. And my original intent was actually to put a montage together of last year's stories. I've just put some stuff together to indicate what I felt were important stories to me. And of course, it would kind of be a year in review type show like I have done before in the past. But I figured this one of the stories that we're doing today was so important to me. And it's important to the LA community because a beloved pastor and a foster mom who was really doing more than what she should have been doing in taking care of people, handing out Christmas gifts on Christmas Eve, and to let some dirtbag who ended up, hitting her and running off and killing her and left her for dead. And to me, that is the most despicable thing. And I wanted to wait until I had some more stories and more information on the incident that happened. Definitely a hit and run. I hope they catch the person. And our hearts and prayers go out to the families of this pastor. And she's a stepmom, or she's a foster mom. She was out there getting gifts for people that couldn't afford it. Dropping off gifts, and this ends up happening. She gets hit and killed, and the driver just keeps on going. These are the kinds of people that kind of really push me to keep doing the shows when I'm tired and exhausted. And I know I really, in all honesty, to tell you the truth, I have not been a good steward of that. I have not held up my end of the bargain where I need to do these shows to make awareness of what's happening, not just here in California, all across America. And I know that lately that my shows have been rising, getting more and more followers, and so I need to keep up my end of the bargain. But I'm asking each and every one of you one thing. If possible, don't spread the word about my podcast if you don't want to. But what I'm asking you to do is spread the word about, hey, distracted driving is dangerous. Hey, texting and driving, it's dangerous. Talk to your coworkers, talk to your family, talk to your friends. And if you end up getting into a vehicle where somebody just automatically picks up their phone and starts texting and driving, or maybe they had a little bit too much to drink, and maybe, just maybe, you got to say, hey, maybe this isn't the time for you to be doing this. If you focus 100% on the road, we can get to our destination safe and sound. Because it only takes a second. It only takes a second. A blink of an eye, Gina says in the opening. A blink of an eye can change your life in many ways that you have no idea. You have no idea how it can rip your life and your family apart until it happens. I have seen it. I have been a victim of people slamming into me. Remember my motorcycle crash that I had? Yeah, that was somebody crashing into me. And a couple of years prior to that, I ended up buying a brand new car, had it for about 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks, maybe. I was going to work, and I got slammed into by somebody who was drunk. And luckily, justice prevailed. They didn't make it very far before the highway patrol caught them. And they were locked up. But see, this is what it takes. It only takes a blink of an eye to change your life or somebody else's life. And if you really sit back and you think about it, with all the commuters that we got going, holiday time, not holiday time, people just going to work. How many lives could be saved if you're just paying attention to the road? If you're just paying attention to the road and knowing what's going on, one or two cars up in front of you. So as they hit the brakes, the car in front of you ends up hitting the brakes, you don't hit them. Awareness. 100% awareness. That's what I'm reaching for here. This is what I'm asking you to do for me. And I will try to hold up my end of the bargain and do shows. And I will try to reach out to compelling guests and have them on. Whether it's over the phone or whether it is over a Zoom meeting, I will try to get these guys on. Now, probably my next show that I'm going to do is going to be the Year in Review. That's the show that I originally intended to do this time. But I felt that this story was so compelling. Not to mention the second story I got. I got this out of Philadelphia. And it is important that we understand, are there true accidents? Yes, there is. True accident, yes, it can happen. But a crash that is totally preventable by you, the driver, is not an accident. It's a crash. You know, I've talked to many of California Highway Patrol. I've had them on the air. I've talked to LAPD. I've talked to guests. I've talked to victims. I've only ended up talking to one perpetrator. That guy still kind of felt like it wasn't his fault. Even though he kind of acknowledged it, but in deep down inside, I don't think he really truly believed it was his fault. Anyways, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I am your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com. All right, when we come back, a story that will rip your heart apart if you actually listen to it. A beloved pastor and a foster mom was killed by a hit-and-run driver on Christmas Eve. On Christmas Eve. We'll be back right after this.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think about going for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone.
Hey, there's no way you can hide it. If you drive drunk, they're gonna find you. So stop kidding yourself.
Sir, have you been drinking tonight?
Sir, have you been drinking this evening?
Sir, have you been drinking tonight?
They will catch you and arrest you. Drive sober or get pulled over.
All right, welcome back to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I am your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course on Facebook, DistractedDB. And you can get the shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and now Intune. Just type in the keyword DistractedDB, and you'll get all my podcast shows that I have done in the past. And I believe now we are starting our 9th year. A 9th year, and so that is a big thing for me. I didn't think I was going to be able to do this podcast show for this length of time, but due to you listeners and followers, and I really appreciate it. And trust me, I get it. I get it. I mean, I've gotten people from Japan, China, Canada, Australia. I've gotten people from, Indonesia. I got China, as I said. I've gotten people from London. I've gotten people from different countries. And of course, all across America, in one way, shape, or form, somebody clicks onto my podcast show. They find it. They listen to it for a short period of time. They may come back. They may not come back. I don't know that. All I know is I get a bing on my little map of the world here when somebody actually downloads my show, listens to it. It doesn't say anything about who you are or anything. It just says, in California, you had 15 people. In Idaho, you had 8 people. In New York, Florida, you got 10 each. Hey, that's good for me. Every now and then you get different places. But, you know, it is a big thing to me, actually, to have listeners and followers. I appreciate that. As I said, I have to do more and I have to do better to get my product out there. I'm here just to save a life. If I can save 1 or 2 lives, hey, man, I did it. I did it. I'm good with that. I did. Because I don't want whatever happened to me to happen to somebody else. And believe you me, it can happen at the blink of an eye, just as Gina said. Anyways. All right, so the story that I got going on right here. This story comes from KTLA Channel 5 here in Los Angeles. And I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound. Quite honestly, to tell you the truth, I have had KTLA pretty much for like 6 of the 8 years that I've been doing this. We're just now starting our 8th year. This is the first show of the 8th year. It's not my year in review show, but that will come probably in the next show, which is going to be relatively quickly here in the next couple of days. All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. Here's a story from KTLA where someone took the life of a beloved pastor and foster mom who was killed by a hit-and-run driver on Christmas Eve. And to me, I hope they get the person, and they need to get the person and lock it up. Keep in mind, hit and runs are what now? Felonies. So keep that in mind as you hit somebody and you look around and you take off. Again, here's a story from KTLA Channel 5 here in Los Angeles. I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound.
Now at 10:30, a community comes together to remember a local activist and pastor who was killed by a hit-and-run driver while delivering presents to children on Christmas Eve. 62-year-old Trina Newman Townsend was struck as she stepped off a curb at 88th and Broadway in South L.A. She was left to die in the street as her 3 foster children looked on.
Tonight, members of Newman's community held a vigil in her honor. KTLA's Chris Wolf was there for the somber tribute.
Trina! Grief, hope, candles, pictures, prayers. This was a candlelight vigil for a beloved individual whose body is gone, but whose spirit continues to fill the streets of South LA, according to those who knew her well. She was 62-year-old Trina Newman Townsend, a community activist, leader, pastor, drug rehabilitation counselor, wife, mother, foster parent, and so much more. In a horrific twist of fate, on Christmas Eve, Townsend was delivering gifts for neighborhood children, apparently loading them into her car, when police say another car slammed into her and the driver kept going. The collision happened at 88th Street and Broadway.
Let's love each other and appreciate each other while we're alive and doing things for the community, for each other.
The crime scene became a point of connection for hundreds of people Thursday night.
She was all about making sure that everybody that went down, that they knew that they could get back up. Male, female, whatever the case might be, they didn't have to stay down. That's who she really was.
She was loved. She gave out her own love. It's a lot. Only thing I just really got to say is whoever did this to my sister, just turn yourself in. That's all we ask.
You see all the people out here, you know, she had a heart of gold, man, and she was an angel. She was one of a kind.
Those close to the family tell me that Trina's 12-year-old niece, Jamisha Newman, was killed in a house fire in Whittier back in 2012. So this family has experienced its share of tragedy. Anyone with information about this case should contact the LAPD. In South LA, Chris Wolf, KTLA 5 News.
All right, and again, I want to thank KTLA Channel 5 for allowing me to use the sound. It is such a tragic story, but I had to tell it. I had to get the audio from KTLA. I had to let you guys know. As people were going to their homes for the holidays, people were getting ready to celebrate, and some families that opened up Christmas presents maybe a little bit earlier on Christmas Eve. This woman, Trina, was out there doing what she thought was right. And she has probably done it several times in the years past. Giving to those who are less fortunate. Handing out Christmas gifts on Christmas Eve. And yet, somebody who was selfish hit and killed her and fled the scene. I'm hoping that KTLA, or I'm hoping that the LAPD actually gets them. If the LAPD can track them down, maybe the California Highway Patrol can track them down. And I'm hoping that they catch them and justice is done for Trina. Because she was doing a very good thing. And yet you got people that were, no, it's no good. Was the person drunk? Don't know. Are they going to catch them? I don't know. I sure hope so. All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com podcast show. We're going to be back right after this with a story from Philadelphia. We'll be back right after this.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think about going for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car. You kill someone.
Hey, there's no way you can hide it. If you drive drunk, they're gonna find you. So stop kidding yourself.
Sir, have you been drinking tonight? Sir, have you been drinking this evening? Sir, have you been drinking tonight?
They will catch you and arrest you. Drive sober or get pulled over.
All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I'm your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast show. You can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course on Facebook, it's DistractedDB. And you can get the shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and now TuneIn. You can get that. Just type in the keyword DistractedDB. My shows will come up, and I appreciate each and every one of you that have been listening to my podcast shows in the past years. We are now starting season number 8. This is show number 1 of season number 8. My year in review show, that's going to come up probably on the next show, if not the next one after that. But I appreciate that. And oh, by the way, speaking of driving, drinking and driving, I haven't got the stats yet back from the California Highway Patrol on Christmas and New Year's DUI arrests or deaths or crashes or anything like that yet. I'm hoping to have those ready for you probably by the time the next show comes around. I'm hoping to have those probably, well, it should be probably by Wednesday, I'm thinking. If not Thursday. We're going to be putting another show together. I've got part of my year in review show all ready to go. Here's a story that I got out of Philadelphia. A hit and run driver who stole an SUV drives down the road and ends up killing an elderly woman. And again, I just don't get it. And quite honestly, to tell you the truth, Philadelphia kind of gave me the information I needed to know on how many hit and runs they had just in 2022. And surprisingly, they seem to be down from what they were in 2021. But here's a story from NBC 10 Philadelphia, and I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound.
Jackie, that's right. A lot of officers here because this scene stretches for almost 2 blocks. A tow truck just got here to take away some of the cars that were hit, but the suspect vehicle is still here, right here. This Jeep with the hazards on, you can see right here, it is destroyed, surrounded by tape. They have a lot of pictures to take of this vehicle, which I'm told by officers on scene was reported stolen this morning.
If y'all please stop running around here stealing people's cars and hitting and killing people.
Sylvia Abraham is holding on to what she says is left of her mother.
I gave her. It's this wallet right here.
She salvaged items from the car the 78-year-old was sitting in moments before a driver crashed into several vehicles parked on 37th and Fairmount Avenue in Mantua. Julia May Abraham was sitting in the passenger seat of her sister's car.
Ashley, it was my aunt. She asked her to park here so she can run in the store. She stepped 1 foot on the steps and she heard a boom when she turned around her sister. So all she seen was the car up in the air.
Surveillance videos NBC 10 obtained show a white Jeep speed down the street, hitting the cars before flipping over across the intersection.
All I just saw was a vehicle just flying so goddamn fast. It had to been like almost no more than maybe about 60 miles per hour.
Tyrell Butler, who witnessed the crash, stayed with Abraham and her sister until paramedics got here to take her to the hospital.
She was breathing. She was giving signs. She was showing that she was still hanging in there tough. It's mindless. It's mindless is what this is. How does someone get involved in something like this? And what, for a joyride?
In the video, we see 2 police cruisers drive by immediately after the crash, but it's unclear if the officers were chasing the suspect. The driver hopped out the car and ran away, leaving a grieving family missing their mother and also wanting justice.
She's a beautiful woman. She cared about everybody. She loved to do hair. She loved to cook. She was an amazing cook. But she would no longer cook no more. Y'all need to stop hurting innocent people.
A lot of innocent people have been affected by hit and runs in Philadelphia this year. Just getting new numbers from the police department that 33 hit and runs have been deadly in Philly so far for 2022. Send it back to you in the studio. We're reporting live from Mantua. Leah Uko, NBC 10 News.
All right, and I appreciate NBC 10 News out there in Philadelphia for allowing me to use the sound, but quite honestly, to tell you the truth, I mean, what she's saying, thousands of people have been saying, no joyriding, no doing this. And I seen the video that this hit and run driver did, going down the side of the street, hitting 1, 2, 3, 4 cars, and then plowing into the victim's car. And that's where she ended up losing her life. The perpetrator, he got out and ran. Of course he did. Of course. It always happens that way. And yet, people still continue to do this when they know the devastation and everything that they're causing along the way. Quite honestly, to tell you the truth, if the judges would just lock people up, if they would lock the perpetrator up for at least 6 months at a time, second offense, make it even more, take their license, start hitting them where it really hurts in the wallet, start doing something like this, and this will probably put an end to the things that have been happening. Maybe, maybe not, but you always have to wonder, hey, am I the perpetrator that's going to end up being stuck in jail for a year for something that probably I didn't have to do because I was an idiot, I'm a moron? Yeah, that's really tough to say, isn't it? All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. Thank you, each and every one of you, for listening to my podcast show. Hopefully, We can do this again. And remember, the next show should be my weekend in review, or my year in review. Man, I've already started out the year messing up. Okay. Remember, I don't want to die today, do you? Until then, be safe.